Again, thank you for joining, everyone, and making the time. And nice, beautiful day. So maybe we can start with a short breathing exercise followed by motivations. So again, try to relax. And try to let go of any tensions, stiffness in your body and mind. Just focusing on the breath, watching it mindfully, and being aware. Then we can try to reflect, contemplate by thinking as long as we have a strong selfish attitude, and self-grasping ignorance, many other disturbing and negative emotion will continue to arise. Sense of disappointment, anger, frustrations, fear, strong dissatisfied, unhappy mind, and many others will manifest and will arise within our mind. When any of those emotion arises, it makes us disturbed, unhappy, miserable, painful. Not only it makes our life miserable and painful when we have any of those emotions strongly, then we tend to also be more unkind. And we act in a more uncompassionate, unkind way towards others. Through any of our body, speech, and mind, and all of them, all of them. Through that, then we bring more pain and suffering in the life of others. So therefore, it brings pain to us and pain to others as well. So if we want to stop creating more pain and suffering to others and oneself, we have to reduce and overcome the selfish attitude and selfish attitude and self-grasping, fundamental ignorance, which is the root of all other delusions and all other negative state of mind. And to do that, we need to cultivate the conventional or relative bodhicitta mind to encounter the selfish attitude. And ultimate bodhicitta mind, the wisdom realizing the ultimate truth that can counter the self-grasping ignorance. And in order to cultivate and develop the true bodhicitta mind, we need to reflect, contemplate, meditate, practice continuously. And for that, we need to be reminded of the practices all the time. That is why we have gathered here. So we might be reminded of those practices. And having been reminded, we can try to implement, apply in our everyday as much as possible. And slowly, that we begin to see some positive changes in our attitude, in our heart, in our mind. And through the changes in our heart, then we begin to see real changes in our behavior and actions. And may our call, may our coming here together, listening, engage in discussions, reflection, contemplations, become cause and conditions to obtain our own highest potential, the fully awakened state, so we can be greatest help and benefit to each and every sentient being. Okay, so we can do the prayer. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the fourth destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sukha, the Lord of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of God and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya flame, I prostrate, make offering, and go for refuge. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all three ever devout him, homage to all worthy of respect, bowing with as bodies as many as all realms, atoms in all aspect. With the supreme faith, I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous action. Perform only perfect virtuous action. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberrations, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of a droop, a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through this merit, may sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the four falls, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. Sashibeke Choshimeto Tariralishe Yindege Bande Sangye Shintu Mite Uwai Dokun Namadashila Shepasho Idam Gururana Mendalagami I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye Chodam Soge Chodam La Changchu Padu Dane Gyatsu Dage Shushe Gibe Sonam Ge Dola Penche Sangye Tuva Sangye Chodam Soge Chodam La Changchu Padu Dane Gyatsu Dage Shushe Gibe Sonam Ge Dola Penche Sangye Tuva Kanye to Jenny Sone, all the Japan was head and mission in Podom de la Chapa. So last couple of weeks, we discussed about how our own selfish attitude and because the minds is the root of our problems, root of our pain, sufferings, as well as that is the cause for us to act more harmful, more uncompassionate, unkind way to others. On the other hand, the cherishing thought for others, the attitude of cherishing others, is the root to bring more real sense of satisfaction, joy, meaning in our life, and as well as it is the root cause to have a good heart, good heart of loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta mind. And which help us when we have those, good type of loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta mind. It gives us a lot of courage, self-confidence, and sense of meaning and satisfaction, as I said before, in our life, and joy and happiness. And because of such good heart and attitude, then that will reflect in our behavior and actions, when we interact with anyone, and so we act more kind, more compassionate. That bring more sense of joy and happiness into others' life, and it helps us to, reduce more harmful and hurtful actions towards others, and to increase more help, benefit, and kind to others. And in that way, then it reduces the pain and suffering of others. It help. It will be able to help to bring more joy and happiness in others. And then, from spiritual point of view, in long term, also it lead us to. It is that it will lead us closer and closer to enlightenment. And so therefore, one of the essence of the Dharma practice, and especially the Mahayana Dharma practice, the Bodhisattva practice, is to reduce and overcome that selfish attitude, to increase and improve the good heart of cherishing thought for others, and which we talked quite a bit in last 2 weeks, and as we discussed last week, probably, and also I asked you to continue to do the meditation. I hope you have done that. In order to have that kind of cherishing thought for others, we have to reflect, contemplate, and feel the kindness of others. The more we feel kindness of them, the more it is easier to have cherishing thought towards them. It's more easy to have a good heart of loving kindness, compassion towards them. And so, yeah, so we kind of discussed that before. And one of there are many different meditations to cultivate loving kindness and compassion, there are many different meditations or different meditation technique, you can say, or method, or different meditations. But in Lojong, one of the main kind of Lojong and mind training teachings, one of the main method to cultivate loving kindness, compassion is through the practice of what we call tonglen, taking and giving. So I think we were on that in some of the verses that we were. It is in where it says practice combinations of giving and taking. Giving and taking should be practiced alternately. So I think that is where another translation, train alternately in the taking and giving. So I think, so this is a very powerful, this practice of tonglen, taking and giving, is very powerful practice. Very powerful practice. To cultivate loving kindness, compassion for those who have not already cultivated, and for those who have already cultivated through this practice, then to be able to maintain and to be able to increase and improve that loving kindness, compassion, and the bodhicitta mind without deteriorating, without declining, and also, this practice is helpful. I think sometimes when we feel kind of helpless, of sudden pain and suffering that you see of someone else, and you want to do something, but in practical, sometimes we feel there is nothing we can do, helpless. And when we do this practice of tonglen, then again, it will help us to overcome that sense of helplessness and actually to be able to do something. So before, in this tonglen practice, tonglen is in Tibetan word. Tong means giving, and len is, tong is, giving, and len is taking. So anyway, tonglen. So in the Nagarjuna's, his precious garland, there is a verses that is related to this practice. Where where he says something like, may I cherish all sentient beings like my own life. May I cherish them even more than myself. May all their negative karma and the result ripen upon me. May all my virtues and their result ripen upon them. So this, you can see where tonglen practice, and in that very Nagarjuna text, Also, he says, as long as each sentient beings are not liberated to nirvana, may I remain to liberate them, even having attained peerless enlightenment. So those are the kind of the practice that you find. And then in Shantideva's Guides the Both Way of Life, you find many similar verses in relation to this. Where one of the verse where it says, if I do not actually exchange my happiness for the suffering of others. So, Tonglen is a practice of exchanging our happiness with the suffering of others. So if I do not actually exchange my suffering for the suffering of others, I shall not attain the state of Buddhahood, and even in cyclic existing, shall have no joy. So again, as Shantideva also says, if you want to achieve enlightenment, if you want to have a happiness, joy in this while we are still in samsara, then we need to engage in this practice of exchanging through the practice of Tonglen, exchanging our happiness with the suffering of others. And then also in another verse, he said, those who ever wish to quickly afford protections to both the self and other beings should practice the holy secret. So the holy secret, the practice here is the Tonglen, the exchanging of self for others. So that is the practice that he, the holy secret here, So again, if we want to protect ourselves and others from pain and sufferings, then again, the technique, the way to do that is the practice of exchanging self with others through the practice of Tonglen. And so again, in another verse where he said, therefore, in order to allay the harms inflicted upon me, and in order to pacify the suffering of others, I shall give myself up to others and cherish them as I do my very self. In another verse, in brief, for the sake of living beings, may all the harms I have selfishly caused to others descend upon me myself. So you can see there are many source of those teaching Tonglen. Those are from India, and then you see that in many of the Lojong's teachings. So those are the kind of the source of the Tonglen practice. And as I was saying before, the Tonglen practice is extremely powerful practice that many practitioners have found in dealing with their own suffering, as well as dealing with suffering of others. And as I mentioned before, it is also very powerful method or meditations to reduce the selfish attitude and to increase the cherishing thought for others, or to develop and to increase loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta mind, and it is an extremely powerful method. So in the practice of Tonglen, you imagine, you visualize someone who is going through, sufferings, problems, challenges, difficulties, and then trying to reflect, contemplate, think on their sufferings, and understand their pain, their sufferings, and having understood their pain and suffering, then not only not like watching someone's pain suffering, but then actually feeling the pain and suffering as it is your own pain and sufferings. So then through that, so you try to reflect, contemplate, to understand someone's pain and sufferings. Then you don't live there just understanding. Next, you try to feel the pain and suffering as though it is your own pain and suffering. And when you start to feel your own pain and suffering, then it is so easy to feel compassion for that person and wanting to relieve of that pain and sufferings, wanting to free from the pain and suffering. Like for example, when we have our own pain and suffering, we want to get rid of it. We want to free from it as soon as possible. As soon as possible, without any delay. We feel that same way when you feel others' pain and suffering, that way then you feel you really wanted to free. You would really want them to be free from that pain and suffering, want to liberate from that pain and suffering. And when you have that wish, that is where the compassion comes. Then compassion can arise easily. That feeling. And when you have that feeling, then you try to take that suffering, the pain on yourself. The suffering, the pain, the challenges, the difficulties, whatever, on yourself. And then you again try to reflect, contemplate, what they are lacking, what they are lacking, what kind of happiness they are lacking, and so maybe, they wish they have a good health, which they are lacking. Maybe they wish they have a good relationship, because that is what they are struggling with. Maybe they wish they have a better financial situations, because that is the struggles that they are going through. Maybe they wish they could have a more calm mind, more calm, peaceful mind, because that is something that is disturbing them, so whatever different level of, whatever different level of comfort, joy, happiness they wish, but where there are struggles in their life, and then again we try to understand that through that kind of reflection, contemplations. And once you understood that kind of their struggle with that kind of better situations. Then you try to feel as it is your own. If we are stuck in those different situations where you would like to fix that problems, and to be in state where you have better situations, more comfort, more joy, more peace, more happiness on whatever level that we are stuck in. And once we feel that, again, then once you feel as it is your own, then it will be easy to feel the kindness, the loving kindness, wanting them to have all this different level of, joy, happiness, comfort, so then it is easy to feel that, to develop and to feel that loving kindness. And once you have that kind of loving kindness, then we send all our virtues, all our goodness, all our positiveness in the form of light, and then giving them whatever they need, and thinking they receive whatever they need, whatever comfort they need, whatever better situation they need, whatever joy, happiness they need. And so that is basic kind of course I will go more detail on that, but that is the kind of basic practice of taking and giving, or tonglen. Maybe we can tonglen, the tonglen practice. That is the very kind of the idea, the basic practices like that. And it is also very, very kind of radical thinking and practice. Normally, most of us, we like to protect ourselves from receiving any harm and suffering from others. We want to build walls to protect ourselves from receiving any kind of suffering, pain, and harm from others. And normally we try to, protect our joy, our happiness, our virtues, all our goodness, to keep for ourselves. So again, we try to protect it in whatever way we can protect it. That is our normal kind of attitude, way of thinking, way of behaving. That's what we do. Here is just the opposite. Here is just the opposite now. Here, instead of protecting and trying to keep our happiness, our virtues, our excellence, everything, we train our mind to give all of that to others. To give all of that to others. Instead of building a kind of wall to protect ourselves from receiving any kind of pain and sufferings, harm from others, here we do the opposite. We actually welcome them. We welcome them we embrace them, we actually intentionally take on ourselves the other's pain and suffering. So, it's such a radical to our very normal, ordinary way of thinking, attitude, and behavior. So our normal, ordinary attitude, with such attitude, helps, it only increase our selfish attitude and decrease our good heart. Our noble heart of loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta. So here, when we totally change it upside down, when we are willing to take, and when we take on others' pain and sufferings, then it kind of, crush our egoistic mind, our selfish attitude. And through that, it decrease, minimize, and destroy the selfish attitude. On the other hand, when we are willing and when we are actually in practice, sending all our virtues, all our goodness, all our positive, excellent, everything to others, then it increase and improve our good heart of loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta mind. So that is the why we do the practice of Donglen. You can see how this practice, you can see how this practice, when it is done correctly, properly, sincerely, how it can reduce our selfish attitudes, the self-centeredness, how it can increase our loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta mind. So in that way, extremely powerful practice. And through the practice of Donglen, when we do it sincerely, correctly and sincerely, it helps us to develop sense of strong self-confidence and courage, inner strength to face any kind of problem, challenges, difficulties, suffering, and pain. Because here you are not afraid of the suffering and pain and harm. In our training, we train to accept them, welcome them, embrace them. So when you train your mind to do that, and as we train, as we get better, we train through the training. Not only we are welcoming, embracing, and being okay and fine with your own pain, suffering, but you are willing to take and wanting more pain and suffering and problem from others. And through that kind of practice, then when you are able to, as your practice get better and better, then definitely you have no fear of pain, you know. Your mind gets to such a point, you have no fear of suffering and pain. And so therefore it gives you such a incredible inner strength, courage to face any kind of difficulties, any kind of problem. And that is how bodhisattvas are able to deal with all the incredible problems, suffering, pain, without being overwhelmed. Without being overwhelmed. Because they have such incredible inner strength, courage, and self-confidence. And that comes through such training. Through such training. And same things, you know, when we train our mind to be fine and okay, even when your fortune, your virtues, your goodness, everything, when it goes away from you, and when someone receives and it helps others, not only you are okay and happy with that, but you are willing and practice to give even more and more, whatever you have to offer, to give, any positive, any goodness that you have to. And when you learn to do that, and when you do, and when you get it better and better through the practice, you reach a point, you know, you have no problem when we lose whatever, you know, when we lose our good health, when we lose our good relationship, when we lose, you know, our financial situation, when we lose whatever there's something to lose, when we lose it, you know, your mind is strong enough to be okay and not being so disturbed and overwhelmed and miserable by that. And again, because of your training, your mind of reach a point where you have that strong mind to be able to keep everything, good things that you have. And because of that. And so that is the key, that the difference between, you know, at the moment, we easily get disturbed, upset, painful, and miserable when we encounter any kind of challenges, difficulties, pain and suffering, because we have been trying to push that all the time. Because we have been kind of trying to push them all the time, not welcoming them. So then, of course, something you are not welcoming, you have so negative feeling about it, and when you encounter that, then of course it becomes much more miserable and disturb our mind very much, make us very unhappy. And same with that, you know, when we lose our goodness, whatever goodness that is in our life, positiveness, goodness, fortune, wealth, virtues, whatever goodness we have, when we lose that again, because we are grasping it so tightly, and we don't want to let it go. We don't want to. We want to hold it very tightly, and we are holding very tightly because we don't want to let it go. And so when we are unable to hold it, when due to whatever reason, when it goes out of our hold, then again it becomes very painful, miserable, make us very unhappy, disturb our mind, because that is something we wanted to hold so strongly and not wanted to let it go, and then now we cannot do that, unable to do that. But here in this training, instead of holding so tightly and not wanting to let it go, you learn to let it go. You learn to give it. You learn to share it. You practice to learn. And when we have practiced and when we have reached a certain point of practice through that, then if it is kind of, go naturally or whatever way, someone take away, you will be able to deal with it with much more positively without being so disturbed, without being so unhappy, without being so miserable, without being so upset and angry. And that is the things, that is the difference in our response, our ordinary response and the Bodhisattva's response to those situations different, because they have gone through that kind of training, and through that training they have developed such a strong inner strength, courage, self-confidence, and all of that, whereas we have not trained ourselves in that way. Instead, we train the opposite way. And so therefore, that's why, when we lose something good and when we encounter something unpleasant, then why our mind becomes so disturbed, miserable, unhappy, and not being able to handle it positively. Because we don't have the inner strength, courage, to be able to deal with that unfortunate new situations. Or yeah. So therefore, there is a difference between the compassions that someone has developed through such training and meditation and practice, and what we call, kind of emotional compassion or biological compassions, which is not through training. We all have that compassion to a certain level. Not only we human beings, even the animals have that kind of compassions. You can see them, the expressions of that kind of compassion, even among the animals. So it is, and that is what we call emotional compassions, that we all have. Some have more than others, but we all have, every sentient beings have that kind of. So since that kind of compassion does not come from similar training, like to the like with Tonglen and such training. So therefore, when we face our own sufferings or suffering around us, then we can easily become so overwhelmed. We can so easily become overwhelmed. And why we so easily become overwhelmed by whether it's our own suffering, suffering of our friends, family, or whether it's a suffering of other sentient beings. When we see it, when we hear it, when we see it, why we become so overwhelmed, you know? Sometimes we become so overwhelmed. Sometimes people kind of shut up themselves because they cannot deal with, when they see the sufferings, they are unable to deal with that because they are emotionally too overwhelmed by that. Make them sick. And because of that, sometimes people just shut their heart, you know. And the reason why we are become so overwhelmed when we see the pain and suffering is in such untrained emotional compassion, is because we don't have that kind of the inner strength and courage. So this kind of training, like Tonglen practice, is a very powerful practice to train ourselves to develop that kind of inner strength and courage to deal with whatever kind of problem, suffering, pain, challenges, difficulties that we might encounter or face, whether it is within ourselves, whether it is within our family, or whether it is within the world that we live in, all of that, you know. So I think, maybe, yeah, we will kind of continue more. Okay. Okay. So yeah, there was a request if I could lead a Tonglen practice before we leave, and I have been thinking of doing that. So yeah, we will do at the end. Okay, so we'll have a short break, and then okay. Mm. And so in order to, well, maybe let me say, as I mentioned at the very beginning of the class, you know, this practice can be very helpful and powerful in dealing with our own suffering, pain. Mm. I remember myself doing this practice when I was, I don't know, maybe around 18, years old. I think I must have received the teaching from one of the teachers at that time. And of course, I wasn't doing really out of real compassions. One day, I think, I don't know what happened, my thumb was swollen and I couldn't sleep. The pain was kind of unbearable, so unbearable. That was when I was in Nepal, Kopan. And somehow, something about the Tonglen practice came in my mind. I don't know. So I started to do Tonglen, I started to kind of take others' suffering and pain on my own, pain of my own thumb, and did some Tonglen a little bit. I don't remember how long I did. And I remember, after some time, I felt that the pain much more less, the pain that I felt so unbearable at the very beginning, it wasn't as unbearable. There was still pain, but it wasn't so strong, and of course, I don't know, maybe it could be physically the pain has subsided, or because of the Tonglen, because my attitude towards it has changed a little bit when you are doing practice, because of your mind, maybe the attitude, maybe you felt less of that pain. But definitely, that was how kind of, I definitely felt the pain reduce. One of my friend, Geshe, he was sharing a story of one of his friends, another monk, who has a very bad problem with migraine, and he used to take some medication for the migraine, and there are some medicine in India, but it seems it doesn't help him so much with those medications. And some of his friends or families, relatives, have sent some migraine medication from some US, and that one seems to help him. And he was sharing, a certain time he ran out of those medicine, and then of course the migraine came, and he put in kind of he was having the pain very strongly, and in those cases, he said he recited the Nagarjuna's the prayer, and he started to the practice of Tonglen, and then again his experience, or he felt the pain was much more less. Pain has been reduced, and because of that, he told my friend that he felt much more strongly devotion to Nagarjuna for that practice, because he can see with his own experience that when he does that practice, he can see the pain being reduced to kind of certain level, And then of course, there are some other stories. In Lama Sopa Rinpoche's, the book, The Ultimate Healing, I think at the very beginning, Rinpoche gives some individuals who have even kind of cure to a certain level of certain sickness through the practice of Tonglen. And in recent time, of course, in Tibet, at one time, the leprosy was kind of very spread, very much in Tibet during, probably around when the Lojong was coming there. So it must be around 10, 11 centuries, and some of the teachers advised them to do practice with the Tonglen. And it is in the stories, they say through the practice of Tonglen, many of them were able to recover from their leprosy. And because of that, it became a well-known in Tibet at that time, this practice of Tonglen as being a practice of the leprosy, or for the leprosy, people who are having leprosy, and in terms of, that it can also, depending on many causes and conditions, that it can affect on others as well, Of course, it depends on many causes and conditions. Okay. There's a stories of, maybe, okay. So as I said, and again, it mainly is a very powerful to cultivate loving kindness and compassion. That is, and to build up the, as I said, inner strength, confidence, courage. So that is. So when we do in terms of the starting point, where to start from the practice of this, maybe if we go to the verse, the next one, it says, and you should begin by taking from yourself. So when you do the practice for Tonglen, when you are training, from where do we start? And there are many different ways of starting it, One way is first you start with someone you feel more close and dear in your life, someone to whom you can feel loving kindness, compassion more easily. And if you have a strong, if we have a strong love and compassion on someone, then there is a more strong willingness and more courage to take their pain and suffering on yourself and to give your all your goodness, positiveness to them. We will have more courage to do that and more easier to do that. And then you extend, so you kind of visualize in front of you of that person, and you can think of their whatever struggle that they might be going through, the suffering, pain, struggle that they might be going through. And then, as I mentioned at the very beginning, and then trying to understand, trying to feel it, and on the basis of that, then when you feel it is as your own suffering, your own struggle, your own pain, then trying to take on yourself, and then trying to give all the happiness, joy, goodness, virtues to them. So that, and then after that, then you visualize someone who is more like a neutral person, more like stranger. And then again, you do that similar way. And next, then you explain to someone whom we have difficulties, whether you call his enemy or not, but someone we struggle, someone you dislike, someone you have some conflict. Again, we try to think about that person's struggles. That person also has struggled, just like ourselves, everyone else. They are just like as sentient beings in the samsara. They have also struggles. Sometimes their struggles are much more bigger than our struggles. Their pain, their problem is much more bigger than our pain, our sufferings. And so trying to reflect, contemplate, try to understand, and then try to feel, instead of like watching from distant, trying to feel that as your own pain, your own sufferings, your own struggles. And once you feel your own, and then again, it is easy to cultivate the compassion. And once you have compassion, then it is easy to do that taking on yourself, and then giving your virtues and goodness by sending it. And so then you explain to all sentient beings. So again, a lot of those meditations are very specific. If we want to really explain to each and every sentient beings, we have to, there is a starting point and gradually expanding. And we always start with the easy one and expand to a little bit more difficult one, and then to the most difficult one. And so that is the very systematic and very powerful way to do it. So the practice becomes more powerful and effective. And sometimes, we can start from the suffering of. Sometimes we can start from the suffering of the most lords, suffering of hell realms, and then expanding the suffering of hungry ghosts, suffering of the human animals, suffering of human beings, and suffering of demigods, and suffering God. So again, sometimes we start from where the most, among the 6 realms, where the most intense suffering is. Because when you feel the intense sufferings, it's more easier, and then you expand to more kind of lighter sufferings and more lighter sufferings in that way. So sometimes we can do from among the 6 realms in that way. Sometimes we can think of something, where sometimes you saw something, sometimes you heard something, whether by yourself on the street or in the news. For example, a child in a war zone, or sometimes you see animals that have been slaughtered, or some others where you can't stop but to feel the pain, where it is so easy to feel the pain because it is so obvious, and that could be different for different people. Sometimes, you see certain animals in such a pain. Sometimes you see another being, especially like a child, without any support, and in a very difficult situations. So basically, what the idea is to start with something where it is easy to feel, where it is easy to feel the compassions, where it is easy to feel the pain and suffering of that person's. And you start with that, and then you extend to others who might be in suffering, but not exactly in that same level. And again, trying to see, and again, trying to contemplate, understand, and feel, and then again, you expand to other sentient beings. So sometimes we can try that way. And especially if we are struggling to feel, if we have a kind of fear and struggle to feel compassion, and we struggle to do the tonglen to others, then we can start with yourself. That is what it's saying. You can begin taking with yourself. So first you start with yourself. You can, sometimes it helps to visualize yourself in front of yourself. Like, it's as though like you are watching in a mirror, you see yourself reflection there. Similarly, you can visualize yourself in front of yourself, and then trying to go through your own struggles, pain, sufferings. It's starting with, small pain and sufferings. And then try really, once you have understand and feel it, and then feel compassion, wanting to relieve of that pain and sufferings. And then wanting to lead in a happiness state, and then offering, then sending the happiness, so you can start with yourself, and then after that, then you can expand to someone who is dear to yourself, and then someone who is more neutral, and then someone, your enemies, and then all sentient beings. Sometimes you can do that. And sometimes for some people, they struggle to find a compassion for themselves. In those cases, first you start with someone where you feel easy, someone who's dear, close to you, and then you start with that, and then you extend to yourself. In some other cases, it will be easy to feel compassion on yourself. Then you start with yourself and then extend to others. So again, depend on individuals, but so there are many different ways from where we can start. Basically, we start from one, and then we try to expand to each and every sentient beings, especially when we really take this practice as seriously, and when we take this practice as more, kind of daily practice, more seriously in that way. And sometimes, we just want to just focus on one individual, who's dealing with the pain and sufferings. Someone who is struggling and dealing with a lot of pain and suffering, whether it's yourself, whether it's someone else. So sometimes we can spend more time and just focus on that, but sometimes we expand that to and embrace all sentient beings. And in long term, that should be, if we take it more serious in that way, then we can do that. So that is kind of in terms of starting point. And next it says, these two should be made to ride on the breath. And that is using the breath, inhaling and exhaling as a tools to do the practice of taking and giving. Because, when we are trying to take and give, if we do certain visualizations, certain imaginations, it helps. And when you use the breath as a tool in that kind of imagination, that visualizations, then it can be more powerful, effective for some people, some practitioners, So basically, when you breathe in, then you visualize taking all the suffering and cause of suffering in the form of, dark energy, like a smoke, riding on that breath. So it comes with the breath as you breathe in, and then go inside your nose, go to your better heart, and then where your selfish attitude is, and destroying that. And then when you breathe out, you visualize, imagine, sending all your positiveness, goodness, virtues, happiness in the form of, white light, energies, and going out. And the moment it touches that person receiving all the joy, all the happiness, all the solutions to their struggle, their problems. And so that is how it, I think. So I think there are a few cautions before I do the practice. There was a cautions whether I could give the verse from Shantideva Nagarjuna. Nagarjuna, I don't know that my translations, I don't know whether it's the correct, not exact translations. Shantideva, I think you can find in chapter 8, meditations, later part of the chapters, I think is after verse number, I don't remember exact, but something after 80 or 90 verses. They are not in same verse, each verses are different places, but is in all of them in chapter 8, in meditation chapter, and especially maybe after verse number 80s or 90s, I think maybe after 80s, where it is exchanging self with others. And then, and I will see if I can find letters. And then there was a questions about the connections between Tonglen practice and emptiness. And then there was another question, who was the author of Ultimate Healing? That is Lama Sopa Rinpoche. Lama Sopa Rinpoche is the author of Ultimate Healings. So in connection to the emptiness and Tonglen, there is two questions. One, is it important to cultivate view of emptiness when doing this practice? That is one question, and there is similar way in case. Is there a connection between Tonglen practice and realization and emptiness? Sometimes the idea comes during those meditations that what is self that I'm trying to protect, and what is other that I'm trying to benefit. And it seems almost to become clear there's no others and no self, but all of those transforming aggregates are moving into one another through time on the current of karma. I have a hard time explaining, but it seems like Tonglen and meditation on the kindness of others or shortcoming of self-cherishing can be a gateway to realizing emptiness. Can you give advice on this, or it is a mistaken idea? So now I think the questions as well as the time for practice. Definitely, of course, the Tonglen, as I mentioned at the very beginning, Tonglen practice meditations is very strongly related with the Bodhicitta, conventional Bodhicitta mind. This is the tools, the method to develop Bodhicitta mind, conventional Bodhicitta mind. And conventional Bodhicitta mind and wisdom realizing emptiness has very strong connections. And there is, according to some of the teachings, you know, for certain individuals, for example, the what they call sharp faculty bodhisattvas, first they have understanding of emptiness, and that realization or understanding of emptiness lead them to have bodhicitta mind. And for some other bodhisattvas who are more less sharp faculty bodhisattvas, first they have bodhicitta mind, and that bodhicitta mind lead them to have a realization of emptiness. So depending on individuals, someone can have one of the realization first, and that lead to the another one, but there is very strong connections between those two practices. There is strong, and of course, if we can bring both practice together, definitely it will be more powerful. If we can bring both practice together without, but it depends on individuals, you know. For some individuals, when they think on emptiness, and if it leads to feeling of nothing, then it can be difficult to develop compassion, because then you feel there is no object of compassion. And so then you might not feel so strong compassion, because you cannot kind of feel the object of compassion. And so then that could be another problem. Or if you are trying to do this practice of taking the suffering of others, then you can't feel the object of the suffering, the others. And so therefore, then again, you might struggle to really feel the other's suffering taken on yourself. And if you don't also feel, you don't have the sense of self, and you cannot feel the object of I there, then again, it might be difficult to feel sending all the happiness from I to others. And so that could be, but if you don't struggle, some people will not struggle that, while they don't see independent self, independent others. At the same time, there's others and self by depending on other factors relatively. And so therefore, there is an object to feel compassion, there is an object to take suffering from their side to our side, and there is an object from our side to send the joy and happiness to others. So therefore, it might not be struggles. So it depends on individual, how you, depending on your practice of, so if someone doesn't struggles, then definitely to bring both practice, emptiness and the Tonglen together would be very powerful. If one of those practice doesn't, hindrance the other practice. It shouldn't be, in generally, it should be enhancing it, but for certain individual at the very beginning, it could be. And so, but generally, as I said, the sharp faculty bodhisattvas, first they have the realization of emptiness and then bodhicitta mind. So realization of emptiness does not hindrance that to develop that strong compassion and bodhicitta mind. And not only they don't hindrance, but that actually is the one which make them to really feel compassion and bodhicitta mind. And so therefore, definitely there is a very strong connections. So again, if there's more caution, maybe you can kind of do next time, okay? Maybe we'll try to be a very short practice today. So again, just try to relax and let go of any tension in your body. Let go of any thoughts, expectation, disappointment, or any kind of thoughts in your mind for a moment by focusing your attention to the breath. Watching your breath mindfully. Then you can generate a good intention by thinking, I'm going to do this practice or meditations in order to improve my loving kindness and compassion. So I can be more help and benefit to all sentient beings as well as oneself. And may it be a cause and conditions to achieve fully enlightenment or fully enlightened state for the benefit of all sentient beings. So then you can think, bring someone in front of you someone, whoever you want to do this practice for you, whether it's yourself, whether it's someone who's struggling, anyone you want to choose, and then try to reflect, think about all the struggles, suffering, pain that persons or that sentient beings might be going through. The struggle could be, about health. It could be relationship, financial situations. Could be a lot of emotional pain, fear, anxiety, fear, worry, anger, or all struggles, all of them. So try to really reflect, contemplate slowly. And also all the negative karma, the potential that is there, that could manifest any time when the cause and condition arises. As well as all the delusions that is within that sentient beings that can create any negative potentials and karma that brings suffering in the future. Then try to feel as it is your own, those pain, suffering, the struggles, as though it is your own pain, suffering, struggle. What it is like to be in that state. If you are in that state, if you are experiencing that, how you feel it. So by feeling that as your own, cultivate a strong compassion and wanting to relieve and liberate from all that pain, struggle, and suffering immediately without any delay. Then as you breathe in, think, imagine, visualize all the pain, suffering of that person's being sucked like a no, I cannot remember the word when you use to clean up, being sucked. And as you breathe in, all this pain, suffering come in the form of black, dark energy, smoke, enter through your nose, down to the heart, and destroying your selfish attitude, and transforming into loving kindness, compassion. So you continue to do that. As you breathe in again, taking away all that pain, suffering, in the form of dark energy with the breath into yourself. Yourself receiving it, and destroying the selfish attitude. And transforming loving kindness, compassion. As you breathe in again, take in all the cause of the suffering, all the negative karma, and all the delusions. The breath in the form of black smoke into oneself, destroy the selfish attitude, transforming positive energy of loving kindness, compassion. Then we take in all the, even the imprint led by the delusions. Again, in the form of dark energy, smoke, with the breath into oneself, destroy the selfish attitude, transform into positive quality of loving kindness, compassion. So you keep on doing until you feel with total conviction you have taken on all their suffering, pain, and cause of pain and suffering. Then as you breathe out, visualize, imagine, and think you are sending all your virtues, all your happiness, all your positive qualities, goodness, in the form of positive light energy, white light energy, mounting on the breath as you breathe out. And then the moment it touches that person receiving all the solutions to the problems, the comfort, the joy, the happiness, whatever their needs are, whether it's good health, good relationship, better financial situation, more peace, whatever. You continue to do that. With the strong convictions that that person's actually receive that. And being joyful for that person to see that person receiving that, and being happy and joyful. Then we send in the form of all the positive karma, all the virtues, not only immediate needs, but also positive karma and virtues. Giving them all the right conditions, conducive conditions to enter the path and all the realizations. We send and give with our breath in the form of white light and energy, all the positive state of mind, loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta mind, sense of contentment, satisfactions, patience, wisdom, realizing emptiness, inner strength, and all the joy, inner joy that come up due to all this positive state of mind. We send and give them all the path and 10 bhumis, and finally to the happiness of enlightenment. And feel joy to be able to have taken their pain and suffering on ourselves, and to give and send all our virtues, positive qualities, and happiness to them. And again, gently bring back your attention to the breath. And we dedicate our virtues to oneself and all sentient beings to quickly cultivate loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta mind, and wisdom realizing emptiness. Those who have already actualized, not to diminish, but increase more and more. And may we be able to achieve fully enlightenment and liberate peace in every sentient beings to that fully enlightened state. Then you can slowly open your mind, eyes. So again, this is just one example of how we can do, but again, as I mentioned, there are so many different ways to do it. We can keep it more simple. We can make it a little bit more extensive. Again, each of you can, vacuum. So yeah, when I was leading a meditation, I was kind of trying to find the words where I was saying sucking all the, so it's a vacuum. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, like a vacuum, kind of sucking. That again, it doesn't have to be that. You can kind of use your own example, how you feel, something kind of, taking the suffering and the cause of the suffering. So, okay, so for today, that is all. And I think the homework for will be the Tonglen practice for this week. So, and I sometimes it can be helpful also, if your mind is ready, if you feel it's ready, if you don't have any kind of strong aversions, it will be good to do someone you dislike very much. I don't know. Maybe in present situation, maybe you might want to take the leader as the object of your Tonglen. That can be good. Or if there is someone who is more annoying than that, you can also take that person as well. But I think it would be nice to do Tonglen because I think sometimes I personally find when you started to do it, then you started to feel a little bit more about their pain. And when you started to really feel their pain, your mind becomes a little bit more soft and a little bit more compassion. And so that is one way, when we have a very harsh feeling, hard feeling, whether it's someone in your life, personal or as someone as leaders in general, we can use that as an object of our Tonglen, and that can help us our mind to be less upset, less angry, and to be more soft, and to make our mind open a little bit. And that's what we want to do, We don't want to hold on such a negative feeling, it's not so healthy and good. So yeah, so we can do the dedications. Due to the merit of this virtuous action, may I quickly attain the state of Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception. into the enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhisattva that has not arise and grow, and that may arise and not diminish, but increase more and more. May all beings everywhere played by the cosmic body mind obtain an ocean of happiness and joy. By virtues of my merit, may no living creature suffer, commit evil, or even fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled. With a mind weighed down by depressions, may the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil, may the naked find clothing, and the hungry find food, and may the thirsty find water and delicious drink. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvest. May all medicine be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be free from their ailments. Whatever disease there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be free. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other for as long as space remains, for as long as sentient remain. Until then, may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, and have a wonderful rest of the day.